Now, speaking of prayer, many would be familiar with the Lord's Prayer or Our Father. Many churches would recite that every week.
Yep.
So if you're not familiar with that, Jesus said, hey, this is how you should pray. So he's a pretty good indicator of something. Now, there's a part of it that's a little bit, I wouldn't say controversial, but it goes from, the address is actually Matthew 6:13.
Yeah, that's where you can find it in the Bible.
Yeah, where it says, lead us not into temptation. So the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church, said, nah, we're going to change it. Do not let us fall into temptation. And kind of the theological thing, or trying to understand this, is that it's not God who leads us into temptation. It is, it could be us, our flesh. It could be the enemy, the Satan. But it's God, though, that will get us out of that when we rely upon Him. So some people may have a little bit of trouble with that. But I mean, I've always thought of this, Maggie. It's not God who leads us into the temptation. Does He let us be tested? Does He want us to get better? More like Jesus, absolutely. So I find it pretty interesting.
Yeah, just to give some context to some of you who might not read the Bible on a regular basis, have no idea what we're talking about. So in the Bible, as you said, Greg, Matthew 6:13, Jesus says, this is how you pray. And he actually prays with the disciples. And so the line is, lead us not into temptation, in amongst many other lines in the prayer. I find it interesting because we have to remember that the Bible was translated by human beings. Mm-hmm. And so even lead us not into temptation, we find sometimes that the translation isn't always correct to the original Hebrew. And so when I think about this, I think, okay, well, the Pope can do that. And I think at the end of the day, we can choose how we want to interpret that, if we want to actually echo that. I think Catholics would say, okay, yeah, we'll take the lead. I don't know how evangelicals would feel about that. But I do understand what he's saying. And I agree with you. God does not lead us into temptation. But I never thought of it that way when I do pray the prayer.
No, and I didn't either. And there's a great scripture that I remember years ago, because we're all tempted. And whether it's pornography or lust or money or whatever,
or lying,
all those things. But I like this. This is the Apostle Paul, St. Paul, from 1 Corinthians 10, that says, "And God is faithful; He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. He will always provide a way out."
At the end of the day, it's all about context and understanding what Jesus meant by that text and what we mean by that when we say those words. Mm-hmm. But a good challenge for us today. Thank you, Pope Francis, for another challenge.